Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right, welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do for a living.
I'm Tomo Delaney. I'm the founder and CEO of NOSHI for Kids, and I live in New York City.
Awesome. So can you just tell me more about the company, like how you got the idea for it and what you guys do?
Yeah, I worked in the fashion industry for 20 years. That was all I had ever wanted to do. It was all I ever did. And then when our second child was born in 2010, I became a stay-at-home parent. I was starting to feel like the oldest person in the room a lot of the time at work, and it's a young person's industry, the fashion industry, and it started to feel like the right time to extricate myself from it. So it happened that our second child was born around the same time, and I used that as an excuse to become a stay-at-home parent, which was amazing in every respect, except for the fact that my kids weren't really interested in food. They weren't necessarily picky eaters. They weren't, I didn't have trouble feeding them vegetables. They just weren't interested in eating full stop. And so I set out on a tour, really, of the grocery stores of downtown Manhattan, fully expecting to be able to find products that kids could use as well as eat, food products that kids could use. I mean, my approach to parenting had always been to treat my kids as equals, and I was trying to sort of move that dynamic into mealtimes. The traditional dynamic between parent and child at mealtimes is it's an argument, because they say they don't want the vegetables, or they don't want to get up to the table, or they don't want this, or they don't want that. And kids recognize very early that they have this power over their parents to say no in that situation, and it can infuriate parents. None of that ever really crossed my mind. All I was trying to do was treat my kids as equals and get them, give them a reason to be interested in food. And I was really surprised to find that nobody made products to be used by kids at mealtimes. There were no food products out there that you could give to a child and say, all right, you can do this. You can use this on your food, or you can use this to mix into your food, and so that really surprised me. And then a family friend I was talking to about this, I was also starting to look for a new career, because the kids were both sort of getting to, the youngest, Davey, our youngest, was starting preschool. And this family friend of ours, Peggy, sent me an email one night and said, I think I've got an idea for a business. And what her idea was the bones of the idea that became Food Paint, which was the product that we launched with. And when she sold that, sort of described that product to me, I was like, that's it. That's the one I've been looking for. It's obvious. It's if your kids are over there at the coffee table drawing with crayons and you ask them to put that down and come up to the table, they're always going to have a problem with that. But if you basically say you can carry on doing a version of that at the table, that buys it, that sort of sells into this idea of giving them responsibility. And so when Peggy described the idea to me, I was like, this is brilliant. I'm going to do it. And I just ran with it. And I had no experience of the food industry, no idea what I was getting myself into, but was inspired enough to do it, and I had the time to do it as well suddenly. And so I just did it. And the first thing I did was to go home and, well, first of all, I went home and I came home and Googled how to set up a food company. And of course, there's nothing there, because it's a much more complex subject matter than just how to set up a food company. It took me literally months to work out how to set up a food company. But what I did find very quickly is research, and all of the research is the same, which is if you do give your kids more responsibility in the preparation of their food, either in the kitchen or at the table, they're far more likely to eat it, because you've set them a task, and kids always want to show their parents they can complete a task. You've shown them that you trust them, and they love being treated as equals and feeling like you trust them, and also you are just giving them something they enjoy doing. I'm like, this is really easy. And so everything about it just really inspired me, and I set off to do it. And that was nearly 9 years ago. And it's been a trip, that's for sure.
That's awesome. So obviously, we spoke earlier and that you guys are retailers, but in terms of your business, are you also doing e-commerce? And if not, what is your plan in that area?
We got very lucky in that I was at a food show nearly 5 years ago, and on the last day of the show, Walmart, a really young guy from Walmart walked out of the crowd. To cut a long story short, 6 weeks later, I had a conversation with one of his colleagues, and at the end of that phone call, it was apparent that we were going to be in Walmart. And it was very unusual, I think. I think most of the time, brands have to travel down to Bentonville and sort of show their wares to Walmart, and it's a process. But I got very lucky. But I think a lot of it was to do with the fact that Food Paint was a unique product, and I think it did, pique people's interests. But yeah, so suddenly in October of 2019, we launched into 200 Walmart stores, and 4 years later, we are still there. We still sell our products in Walmart. Having said that, and you talk about e-commerce and next steps, we are about to launch this range of savory tubes, which are products that people already buy, that people understand, that we know children love. We know children love ranch dressing. We know children love ketchup. We know children love Chick-fil-A sauce, which this is a version of. Obviously, everybody does versions of Chick-fil-A sauce. This is organic. So these are lessons learned from Mark Cuban's team, who are obviously incredibly smart and very good at what they do, and a plan being formed that really does focus more on e-commerce. Actually, like, we're launching those in April of next year, and our plan is to basically just go really, really big guns blazing DTC, because the margins are just so much better. I love working with Walmart. Everybody at Walmart who I work with is amazing, but we all know, I think, that that trying to make it work in bricks and mortar retail is tough because the margins are what they are. And if you could get a better margin online, then you have to go where the money is, basically. And this is another thing that Cuban's team taught me, is like, spend as little as possible, make as much as possible, increase your margins as much as possible. They've been very good at helping me focus on the business and turn it more into a profitable business.
For sure. So when you say D2C, what percent of that are you planning on selling for, direct from your website versus even going into Amazon?
I would imagine probably the vast majority of it will be on Amazon, because on Amazon we can sell individual tubes, and on our website we'll be selling it by the case, and on a case there'll be 6 of these tubes, whereas on Amazon we can sell it as individual tubes. Which I think is, two different channels, two different approaches.
Right. And so, like you mentioned, Mark Cuban and his team, which is awesome. So how much time have you actually spent with Mark himself, or is it more just like people underneath him that are on calls with you? Like, what does that look like working with them?
I speak to his team every day. I speak to some of them every day. I speak to others weekly. I speak to others as and when I need to. I email Mark regularly, either with updates or with questions, and he always replies promptly, and his replies are always brilliant because he's very, very busy. So he's very focused. He replies to everything, and his replies are always extremely concise and extremely information rich. And he's always right, not to put too fine a point on it. He's very tough, but he's very fair. The information you take away from his emails, you always come away from them thinking, absolutely, you're exactly right. That's exactly what I need to do. Or thank God for you, because I was struggling with that one, and you've just completely helped me focus on it. So he's an amazing I don't even know why we're having this conversation. Of course, he's an amazing resource to have. I'm very, very lucky. But yeah, once you're part of the family there, the sort of Mark Cuban company's family, they treat you as a member of the family. They want everyone to succeed. It's an amazing situation to be in. I'm very, very lucky.
So when they're working with you, for example, like, are they putting people in your company, like marketing people, like media buyers? Like, what does that look like? Or is it more of just like guiding you and saying, hey, you have to go and hire these people, hire like this resource or that resource? I'm just curious in terms of like what this partnership looks like.
It's actually better than that, in that I know what they all do, and I know who to contact if I have a question that I'm struggling to find the answer to. It's more sort of, as I say, it's more guidance. It's like, why are you doing that? Or why aren't you doing that? Or do you need help doing this? And we think you should be doing that. And
Right.
you need to be doing more of that. And you need to be doing less of this. And it's much more like that. But of course,
Right.
then a conversation, and then over the course of a conversation, you sort of, it becomes more granular, and you work out what you're doing. And it's just really good. I mean, I'm a one-man band, I'm a one-man band. I've always run this company out of my apartment. And so to suddenly have effectively an office full of incredibly smart people who are, you definitely feel that they're working alongside you, is priceless.
That's awesome. So in terms of ecom, like, what would be considered a successful year, even like an approximate revenue, if you can share, like what would be considered a successful year in 2024?
If by the end of next year, I'm selling 1,000 of these each per week on Amazon, I think that's eminently achievable. And I think that would be, a very good end to next year.
That's awesome. And like, what do you think is the biggest obstacles in the way from where you're at now to selling 1,000 of those per week on Amazon?
Exposure, marketing, lack of a marketing budget. I've recently been doing a lot of research on brands that have just cracked DTC, who've been DTC only and who have done it very, very well. And there's one brand in particular, Schoolyard Snacks, who did an amazing, amazing job. And so I've been reading a lot on them, basically sort of running their playbook, which is quite straightforward. I mean, I know social media when they started was, it's evolved since then, but it's still quite a straightforward process. I mean, they just talked about contacting as many micro influencers as possible. But the bit that resonated is they had 3 or 4 months before launch, during which they implemented this plan. I now have 3 or 4 months before launch in which to implement a plan. And so it just so happens that I've been reading about those guys and what they did. And because the timing is so perfect and so identical, I'm just, I'm inspired, and I spent the last 3 days contacting micro influencers. I was working at a distinct advantage over them in that we have 14,000 Instagram followers. So it's very easy for me to just scroll through all of my followers and pick out the ones who have between 1,000 and 10,000 followers and themselves, and send them a little note and saying, can I send you some free product in exchange for you maybe sharing it with your followers and a discount code for them. And over the course of the last 3 days, I've had responses from people with a combined following of 1.2 million followers. And that's all people with accounts of, as I say, up to 10,000 followers each. So I think, this is the difference between food paint and this stuff is that, and this was something that Walmart said to me, actually, you want, and it's, of course, it's common sense, you want a shopper walking down the aisle in the grocery store or on Amazon to understand what this is immediately. They need to understand what it was. They need to understand what it is. They need to understand why they need to buy it. If it's something they already buy, then all the better. But you just need to make the sale as easy and as fast as possible. And so that's what I'm trying to do. And I think, me being able to send a photograph of these to each of those micro influencers, you almost don't need to send any text with it because it's very obvious what this stuff is. Plus, it's in really innovative packaging that people haven't seen before. And again, the ethos, the NOSHI ethos is still there, which is these are products designed primarily for use by children in packaging that children can handle. A big 24-ounce bottle of Heinz ketchup is quite, you almost had to pick it up with 2 hands as an adult, whereas a 5, 6, 7-year-old kid can pick this up with 1 hand and use it relatively easily. And so I think, we may have pivoted away from food paint towards these things, but the general messaging and the general thinking behind it still remains the same. These are designed primarily for kids. I mean, obviously, I'm hoping the grown-ups use them as well because they are delicious. We've had the sauces custom formulated and they are absolutely amazing. But yeah, the nothing's changed in that. We want to bring kids into the conversation at mealtime.
For sure. So besides, having a marketing budget, like what would you say are some of the biggest challenges that you face in the business?
Well, at the moment, it's like, I'm effectively launching NOSHI 2.0. So it's a matter of, I found a co-man in Ohio that I think is going to work very well for us because they just fill tubes. That's what they do. And historically, it's been very hard for me to find a co-packer that has tube filling capabilities. I had to buy a tube filling machine when we started because co-packers didn't have them. Because I'm launching NOSHI 2.0 and the products aren't going to be on sale until next April, in the interim, I'm raising money in order to pay for packaging, in order to pay for ingredients, in order to pay for production. And I really do need to try and raise some money to allocate to marketing as well. It's still expensive. It's still really expensive launching a DTC brand or keeping a DTC brand, CPG brand and keeping it afloat as well.
For sure. So obviously now everybody's looking for the best ways to use AI in their business. So for you, do you use AI? And if not, where could AI come in and potentially help you out?
I'm just, as are most people, I think, I'm just starting to understand why it's relevant to a CPG brand. It's more, I think it's, something that I'm starting to experiment with it on is writing blog posts for a blog to put onto our website to increase our, to improve our SEO, things like that. I mean, I don't really, maybe it's because I'm older and maybe, if I were in my mid-20s, 30s, I would feel more comfortable around it and understand it better and understand it and also probably have the time and energy to do the research on it, but I'm obviously wary of it. I'm wary of I don't want to think, oh, well, we'll launch a blog and I'll just get it written by AI, because that's, to me, that's fake, right?
Right,
And
for sure.
but at the same time, I know people do it, and I know people are going to do it more and more, and people will become more reliant on it, but it will also become smarter itself. And there is going to come a time when people do just accept that that's been written by AI, and that's fine. But it's a very strange time to be trying to integrate it at the moment. I think it's happened very quickly, and it's happening very quickly, and it's evolving very quickly and improving very quickly. And by the time we launch next April, God only knows where it's going to be. It could be like, it could have shot off down the road ahead of us and be 20 years further down the road than we expect it to be by then.
For sure, yeah, it's very exciting. So, what would you say is like the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew before you started this company?
I don't know, because as I say, I had no industry experience. And if I had known what the following 9 years were going to look like, would I have been scared away from doing it? I would like to think not, because I spent the previous 20 years sitting in studios with celebrities and going on amazing trips to glamorous, onto beautiful beaches with supermodels. And it was an amazing career. But the food industry, which is, car parks in Western Pennsylvania and talking to guys with gun racks on their trucks before you all start your shift at the food processing plant at 5 o'clock in the morning, in the winter, in the dark, in the snow. Very, very different, but actually far more stimulating. I find the food industry absolutely fascinating. It's the weirdest industry in the world. We all buy food. We all go grocery shopping at least once or twice a week. It's something we all have firsthand experience of, but we pay zero attention to it. Nobody stops to think how that bottle got onto that shelf in that store. They just put their hand on it and pick it up and put it in the grocery cart, and they move on to the next aisle. It's a really, really crazy industry. And the last 9 years has been a wild, wild ride. And I actually wouldn't change any of it at all, because it's made me grow as a person. It's made me learn a huge amount. It's forced me to learn a huge amount just to keep my business afloat and keep my business moving forwards. But it's really expensive. On the one hand, everybody says, if you're going to launch a CPG company, do it when you're young before you have kids, because it's really exhausting and you'll still have the energy then. But the flip side to that is, if you do it then, you don't have an address book full of people who might have enough money to invest in your company and to help you move your company forward, whether it's through investment or just through expertise and people in different areas. So it's, everybody's journey is different. I did it on my own. I think maybe I probably would have preferred to do it with an equal partner who was around the same age as me, who was as immersed in it as I am. Because when I first started filling tubes, we were doing it out of an incubator in New Jersey, where I had put the aforementioned tube filling machine, and I would go in there on my own and work, and all the other teams of people that were there, they were like pairs, or there'd be two people working together. There'd be two, like couple of business partners filling olive oil bottles, or three people who ran a kimchi brand. And I felt very lonely on those days, because I could see them all, and I could see it's great. It would be great to just have somebody here all the time that you could bat ideas off. But the flip side to that is, I'm able to make decisions quickly and act on them quickly. I don't know. Like I say, it's hard. It's impossible to give advice. It is a wild, wild industry to get involved in. Amazing as well. I love it. And like I said, it's a puzzle. I'm convinced I can find the solution to, and it's really good fun looking for the solution to this puzzle. How do you crack the food industry? How do you make that money? How do you reach that many people? How do you, what's the word I'm looking for? I want people to love my products. I love my products. I think there's something really special about them. They're delicious. They're in very innovative packaging. And, I've seen how children respond to my products in the past, and I just want to see more of that. I just, it's really good fun. Even it's the most terrifying thing I've ever done in my life, but it's also the most fun, I think, the most fun thing I've ever done in my entire life as well. It's a really weird conundrum.
Well, I think that just describes entrepreneurship in general, right? It's like it's terrifying, it's fun. The highs are really high and the lows are really low, and it's just like pushing through it is
Yeah.
really just what you've done. So if we're gonna have this conversation again in 1 year from now, where do you see things going for the business?
As I say, I would really love to think we're selling, ever increasingly higher and higher numbers on Amazon and on our website. I've just had a very, very interesting opportunity put in front of me about exporting our products to a single country, but an interesting one. And if we we can crack that in the way that I'm being told we probably can, then the sky's the limit.
Awesome. Well, that's exciting, and we're rooting for you. So, if somebody watching this wanted to reach out, do you mind sharing your company website or social media, just best ways to get in contact with you?
Yeah, the website's just noshiforkids.com, and our email address is on there, as is our Instagram handle as well. So just go to noshiforkids.com and I'll answer your messages.
Awesome. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for your time and have a great holiday season.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much. It's been good fun.
Thanks. All right. Bye.
See ya.